All right. This first one today, uh, here's the situation, folks. It's one of those that you don't want to believe, but you already know most of the facts, so you kind of go along with it. So if I were you, I'd share this, and we can connect the dots later and find out whether or not this is 100%. All right. It's coming from thecommonsenseshow.com. Now, despite what you're going to think right off the top, let me read the title and go through some of the information, and we can find out from that whether or not it is more legit or less legit. Any day now, Russia will launch a three-pronged invasion of the United States. Well, crappy title because that's not exactly what it's about. But here we go. Basically, coming down here. I think I went too far. Okay. In the final days of Jade Helm, or in Jade Helm's successor, Russian troops be introduced to the drill gone live, and will carry out mandates against American people with a vengeance. This will serve as a buffer against American military forces which would act in defense of their constitutional oath and defense of the American people. Part 1 detailed how Russia is poised to invade the United States. First off, they're not going to invade the United States, people. They're not going to invade. They're already here. Okay? We've heard of Russian being a part of UN training even in my area. They supposedly have a whole company of Russian commandos, or at least supposed commandos, in Waterford, which is about, I'd say probably about an hour from me. Okay, so this idea that there's going to be a mass invasion, it's not. I'm sure they'll give support for reserve troops and everything, but an idea of an invasion, they're already here. Let's be honest, if they've planned this in advance, they're already here. Okay, so it'll be largely undefended, or rather, here we go. So in this here, it says it in part 1, Russia is poised to invade the United States through a largely undefended Alaska and then down the west coast. In part 2, Russian military builds up the North Pole will lead an invasion of the United States on a second front as Russian troops will sweep through Canada and past the northern border of the United States. Well, let's look at that for a minute. Let's look at what we already know. We know Russia is in the North Pole and in Siberia having doing oil drills, putting military troops on command, this and that and everything else. We know that there's been a lot of troops seen in and around Canada that are not American and not Canadian. I scrolled down a little bit. During the lifespan of the Obama administration, Obama and his people have purposely ignored the buildup of Russian military alliances with former U.S. allies in Central and South America. The alliance also connects to the BRICS, which will compromise the vanguard of the invading army, which will cross the border into America from the southwest across the Gulf of Mexico and Gulf states region. All right, so we already know that this is at least partly true. Whether or not you know this yourself, do your own research. Find out the parts of this that we don't already know. This next couple of parts seem pretty decent. In Nicaragua, according to March 2, 2014 Strategic Cultural Foundation report by a pro-Russian think tank, Nicaragua quoted former Standista leader Daniel Ortega, who installed himself in 2007, a Nicaraguan leader, stated, "We're very grateful and very appreciative of the Russian people and their support of our country. Ortega has accepted an arrival of 2 Russian strategic bombers and added more that will be on their way as Russia announced Nicaraguan announced. Yeah. Russia announced that Nicaragua has announced that it will accept routine Russian patrols in both the Caribbean and Pacific ports. So we already know that that's already going on. As well as participating in the joint training of military personnel, so that's going on. Russia and Nicaraguan have moved into direction of strategic economic military relationship via the Russian Security Council Secretary Nikolai Petroshev in Argentina. Putin is getting friendly with Cristina Fernandez, the Argentine president, determined to develop close economic relations with Russia. Left-wing liberal Argentine leader has invited Russia to invest in fuel projects. I don't know if it would be an obvious attack upon the petrodollar, but it's definitely to balance it out. Fernandez also cut a deal with Putin, which supports Russian grab of Crimea in exchange of Russian support of Argentina's quest to annex the Falkland Islands. If this is followed through with this would be a direct act of war. So Argentina, I guess, has control of the Falkland Islands, and basically, as we know, and I've said it before, they want control. I don't know if this is completely legit, but let's go with it and say it all is. Fernandez's statement is most certainly a direct Russian slap in the face of our closest ally, England, and should be viewed as an attack upon NATO further. I don't know if it should actually be an attack on NATO. I mean, Falkland Islands have been in different possessions over the last 30 years. I'm not even certain NATO should even be getting involved. If anything, it's a UN crisis, not a NATO crisis. Ecuador, Venezuela, Bolivia. Ecuador's president, Rafael Correa, praised Russia as a great nation while visiting Moscow in 2013. Invested $1.5 billion in new domestic energy projects in Ecuador, or Russia invested in Ecuador. I'm just trying to get through this. Correa also stated that his country was planning on buying Russian military equipment. Russia has signed several billion-dollar contracts with Venezuela to supply Bolivia, or Venezuela and supply Bolivia. Okay. Among other countries, freedom and religion with military weapons. The military packages include attack aircraft, helicopters. Who would these weapons be used against? Well, it is what it is. Equipment goes bad, you got to build it up. In Brazil, Brazil's defense ministry, Celso Amorim, stated more than buying military equipment, what we are asking and seeking for is that Russia is a strategic partner and a strategic partnership based on the joint development of technology. Armium's statement is consistent with the fact that Brazil, and South America's most populous nation, has announced that it is planning to purchase short-term medium-range surface-to-air missiles, Panzer S-1 missile batteries, and Igla-S shoulder-held missiles from Russia previously. Brazil has purchased 12 Mi-35 attack helicopters. Russia and Brazil have also signed an agreement for Brazil to acquire 36 aircraft. Armium in Russia and Brazil would also look at working together on space technology and the defense against cyber attacks and various other things. So this is basically it. And, you know, with America and Russia being involved with Cuba, everybody's basically bringing it down and saying, you know, there could be another Cuban Missile Crisis, etc. Goes on to basically talk about Lieutenant General John Raymond, Commander of U.S. Military Space Operations, about the Chinese. They have performed an array of anti-satellite weapons and space-based weapons, so that brings in... this has nothing to really do with it, but it just kind of brings it down more. So I'm not going to go into this too much more because I'm getting further and further away from everything. But basically, as you can see, the stories here that matter is that when America decided to slip from the world, Russia basically took advantage. They're supplying helicopters and goods and giving to the petrodollar, or potentially taking away depending on how it goes, in all the major South American countries. And where America has failed to act, Russia has decided to act in our stead. I don't know if this means there will actually be an invasion. What it means is that they're on our doorstep. They're in the politics. They have aggression with the UN, and I know, believe at least, there are several companies of UN Russian soldiers on U.S. soil. A couple of those fires we had a couple of years ago, if you remember, there were sightings of Russian troops in the area burning things, and then that got quiet. So this is all planned months, years ahead of time, folks. Thanks.